to expound and learn many halachas through that, or expound the story. And the samach of Pardes is soid, the secrets. And there was always the element of soid in Torah. When there were prophets, and the prophets actually saw God to some degree in their visions and their experiences, that is the idea of Kabbalah. In Kabbalah, you learn about the different, so to speak, all the levels between us and God. You know, someone may learn Kabbalah and feel that God is so removed because there's so many rungs to the ladder with Him in the top and us in the bottom. And Chassidus makes sure to point out that would be a misconception. God is at the top of the ladder, and there is a very long ladder coming to us. But the entire ladder is only our perception. As far as God, He exists equally at the bottom of the ladder as the top of the ladder. The diminishing of light as you go lower and lower is only the perception of the creations. Okay? That's just an important thing to know. Because otherwise someone could dabble a bit in Kabbalah, and the more you learn, the more you study, the more spiritual worlds you study about, you realize that the distance between us and the Godhead, so to speak, is extreme, infinite. And Chassidus says it's only our perception of things. As you go lower down, the light diminishes. But God Himself is present everywhere, and to Him there's no concealment at all. Okay, having said that, so during the times of the prophets, a nevuah, if someone has a real prophecy, you know, that's the ultimate of Kabbalah. Kabbalah, you're studying God's attributes, how He manifests Himself. In prophecy, you actually see it, you experience it, so you have the real thing. But then in the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash, that's it, in and out. In the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash, prophecy ceased. Mishamei Sechaga, Zechariah, Malachi, when the three last prophets passed away, nevuah ceased from the Yidden, as the Gemara says. But there were those that still studied Kabbalah, but they were few. This is exactly 1,000 years after the Yidden left Mitzrayim. 40 years into the second Beis HaMikdash. The Hebrew year is 3448. Exactly 1,000 years. We actually had a whole shir on Hanukkah. It was the same time as the rise of Alexander the Great. And we explained how the rise of Greek wisdom is actually what pushed out prophecy. There is a debate between Jewish sources and secular sources of the exact date of Alexander the Great's birth and death. It's a couple decades off, nothing too big.
The year 70, common era.
320.
No. This is in the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash.
400 years.
Year 70, the common era is destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. You got to go back 380 years.
Would be.
So it was 3448 is 312 BCE. Either way, we have some more. Good thing I made some more copies. So you had individuals that learned Kabbalah, but it definitely was not mainstream. You had Yechidei School. Now, what did they learn from? So that we're going to discuss. Sorry?
I'm saying it wasn't called Kabbalah, it was Hechalot.
Well, it was called Soid. We're going to speak about what books they had or they didn't have. But Pashtus, they didn't have those either in the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash, only later. Hold on, let me just get everyone a piece of paper, the copies here. And there's a few over here. Yeah, we'll talk about it. Let's just, let's make sure everybody has the papers. Whoa, what's going on over there? Did I say something wrong? Who else requires papers? Anybody? Mendel, the host? Eli. Listen, we have a choshmah guest over here. Take two. Oh, well, you. Okay. And Kabbalah continues by individuals throughout the second Beis HaMikdash. Towards the end of the second Beis HaMikdash, you have the Tanoim. Amongst the Tanoim, there were a few of them that were noted Kabbalists, namely Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his teacher, Rabbi Akiva. We know Rabbi Akiva was great in the hidden wisdom. There's a Medrash Rabbah, well-known Medrash. The Medrash Rabbah says that even secrets that Hashem did not reveal to Moshe, he revealed to Rabbi Akiva. Secrets of the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know, Rabbi Akiva was taught. And Reb Chaim Vital's son, Reb Shmuel Vital, he says, what was the only thing Moshe didn't know? So it's a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. The Eibishter created in the world 50 gates of wisdom. All of them were given to Moshe except for one. He got 49. And that's what David refers to in Tehillim. Vatachasreu ma'at melikim. Eibishter, you made Moshe, a drop off, one stage lower than God himself. What didn't Moshe know? The 50th gate. Now it happens to be in Kabbalah's form, it says the 50 gates has more than all other 49 gates combined. And in fact, some say Moshe knew from the 50th gate, 49 parts of the 50th gate. There's all discussion about this. But either way, says Shmuel Vital, the fact is the Medrash Rabbah says that what Moshe didn't know, Rabbi Akiva knew. Which means Rabbi Akiva must have known the 50th gate of wisdom. So Rabbi Akiva excelled not only in halacha, in that part of Torah, but in the secrets as well.
Do we know any of the gates?
Everything you learn is connected to, which gate is which thing of wisdom. No, you would have to be, no.
There's not like a list.
No. Well, there's 32 paths of wisdom. There's Lamed Beis, Nesivos, Chachma, which are...
You don't know?
Well, it could be many things you're learning are from those gates, but you wouldn't necessarily know which gate you're tapping into. It's not just gate of wisdom; it's gate of spirituality. Someone you might feel an inspiration in some part of your Judaism, and that's connected to one of those gates. Now, which specific number, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, but you said Moshe thought that he knew 49 out of 50.
He did know 49 out of 50.
Right, so he knew which were gates.
Yeah, he knew. If you're in that club of the Moses Club, then you would know. But for the average person, you would not. Unless you're a Kabbalist, then you can get a feeling of which gate. The truth is, the 49 days of Sfiras Ha'omer, every day we rectify another quality in the soul, is also each night corresponds to another one of the 49 gates. But let's leave this. This is just parenthetic. So Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai were noted Kabbalists, yes?
Who was he Makabel from?
Rabbi Akiva was Makabel Kabbalah, but Pashas from Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer HaGodol. Rabbi Eliezer HaGodol's Medrash, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, which was written by his students about 2,000 years ago, a little less, slightly after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. There are many Kabbalistic ideas that come from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. And the Gemara speaks that Rabbi Eliezer used to change nature. He was able to create things. The Gemara says stories. So Rabbi Eliezer as well. In fact, the Arizal will come to this. The Arizal believes very much that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wrote the Zohar. But the Arizal said, and you can find it in one of Reb Chaim Vital's Sfarim, the Arizal says that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was not the greatest Kabbalist of his time. But he had a skill that no one else had. He can camouflage the deepest secrets in statements that unless you had the right glasses, you wouldn't bichlal realize what's going on. So unless somebody is a trained, someone has the knowledge, the understanding, the perception, they can go through the Zohar and not realize at all the true mystical teachings Rashbi is trying to convey. So Shimon Bar Yochai was able to pull off a magic trick, and no one else was able to do that. That's what the Arizal said. That's why he says Rab Shimon Bar Yochai was selected to be the one to put all the teachings as they are in the Zohar. We'll get there. Anyhow, fine. So there were many Tanoim that excelled in Kabbalah. After the Tanoim, you have the Amoraim. The Amoraim, you don't have too much in Gemara. In Gemara and Sanhedrin, it says that some of the Amoraim would learn Sefer Yetzirah and they would create things. So that's already mentioned in Gemara. After the Gemara, which was put together around the year 450 or so of the Common Era, for the next 500 years, the times of the Gaonim, we know very little about them in general, about their lives, about what they wrote. Definitely, who was a Kabbalist, we know very, very little. But after the Gaonim, when the Rishonim begin, about 1,000 years ago, we begin to know much more. In fact, if you look at the sheet I have over here, I divided the groups of Kabbalists about 800, 900 years ago into three groups, into the Hasidei Ashkenaz, the Kabbalists of Germany, the Kabbalists of France, and the Kabbalists of Spain. Now, we're going to have a look at them momentarily. But if somebody was a Kabbalist 1,000 years ago, what was he learning? So first of all, he had to have a teacher. Kabbalah is called Kabbalah because you have to receive it. You have to receive it. Halacha, somebody could maybe teach themselves and get more or less a good grasp on the nigla, on the revealed parts of Torah. The esoteric parts, if someone doesn't have a proper guide, they'll completely distort and misunderstand what they're reading. And for that reason, Kabbalah was always, kind of locked up in a closet. Very few people dabbled in learning Kabbalah because they were worried, if I don't understand it, it'll be damaging. It'll be counterproductive. I'll come to wrong conclusions and, it's destructive. That's why it's called Kabbalah. It has to be taught, it has to be received. You need a teacher, a master teacher to pass it on. And finding that itself was hard. 1,000 years ago, even if somebody wanted to learn Kabbalah, to find the person, they might have to travel. They often would travel, and it was a great commitment, and therefore it was uncommon. But if somebody wanted to learn a text, so what did they have? So somebody mentioned Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah goes back to Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu put together a book, and this book is quoted often in Chassidus, where it speaks there already about the 10 spheres and the letters of the Aleph Beis, etc., etc. And the Gemara testifies to the fact that the Eibishter used the letters of the Aleph Beis to create the world. So if you're able to find the tricks Hashem used, then you could do it yourself, which is how tzaddikim created golem, whether animals, whether people, etc. Sefer Yetzirah was put together by Avraham Avinu. There are traditions it was made by Rabbi Akiva himself, by Rabbi Akiva. So is that an argument? According to many, no. They both worked on Sefer Yetzirah. Rabbi Akiva added many psukim to it. Rabbi Akiva added parts to it. He finished the job, but it goes back to Avraham Avinu. And we know Avraham Avinu created things. He created, he had a shear, he created one of the calves that he served the angels. That's why he was able to serve it together with milk, because on a miraculous item, which was actually another shear we had, a miraculous item is not governed by the laws of halacha. According to someone, it says in Parshas Lech Lecha, V'hanefesh asher osu b'choron, that Avraham and Sarah left Choron to go to Eretz Yisrael. They took the souls that they made. What souls did they make? So the Ravid says in his commentary to Sefer Yetzirah, it means golems. When it says the nefesh asher osu, literally they made. Avraham made golems. A golem is better than Gilgulim. It's all the same. Anyhow, listen, it's like Baomer. We got to get in the mood, or we got to get. If you want to dance around that bonfire.
Somewhere Avraham had a few hundreds for him.
He made a few hundreds for him. Avraham wrote lots of svarim in halacha about avodah zarah, because as a ben noyach, a few of the mitzvahs of a ben noyach surround avodah zarah, and Avraham wrote many works in halacha pertaining to the goyim of his time about avodah zarah. And he wrote Sefer Yetzirah, and Rabbi Akiva touched it up. Okay, that's the standard acceptance. That's Sefer Yetzirah, and it was extant. And the Gemara says Amoraim had it, and therefore 1,000 years ago, if somebody wanted to learn Kabbalah, they would try to get their hands on a manuscript, right? This is well before the printing press, a manuscript of Sefer Yetzirah. What else was there? So look in number one. Let's already start. Number one is from the Zohar. We're going to learn some raw Zohar over here, okay? So join me. This is in Zohar in the end of Parshas Bereshis. It says in Parshas Bereshis, Zeh Sefer Toldos Adam. It's a pasuk. This is the book of the generations of Adam. Says the Zohar, number one, the top. Zeh Sefer Vadai. When it says this is a book, it's literally a book. Adam had a Sefer. Really? Adam wrote a book? It must have been a bestseller, right? Who did he sell it to? His wife. Vahu Kimna. This is what we've established. The Kad Hava Adam begins at the Eden. When Adam was in Gan Eden, Nochis, oh no. Okay, the first letter of every line was chopped off. Okay, let's see if we can get this. Nochis like Kutshabrichu Safra, the Eibishter gave him a sefer, Al Yada de Raziel Malacha, Kadisha, through an angel called Raziel. Raziel is a malach in heaven, and his job was to teach secrets to people. That's why his name is Raziel. Raziel means the secrets of God. That's what he did. He taught the secrets to people. And he started by teaching to Adam. Memuna al Raze Eloin. Raziel is the malach who is appointed on top of all secrets in heaven, Eloin Kadishin, Ubay, and in this sefer. So it sounds like the Eibishter handed this sefer to Adam. Not that Adam wrote it, not that Adam was taught by Raziel and he committed it to writing. Rather, Adam was given a book itself. Ubay, in the book, Glyphin, it's engraved, Gilufe Eloi, and exalted engravings, V'chachma Kadisha, holy wisdom, V'shivin V'train Zini de Chachmasa. There are 72 types of wisdom, have a misparshin minei, would be explained from the book, or would depart from the book, and they would turn l'shis mea to 600, v'shiva and 70, glyphin again is
Is that like hieroglyphics?
no, maybe glyphin means chakika, means engraved. The raze eloi of the eternal right. B'emtzausa de safra, in the middle of this book, Gelifa de Chachma said there's also an engraving of Chachma. It could just be engraving, just is how we're referring to how that book was written, right? The book descended from heaven, so it was not with physical ink on physical paper, or who knows, we never saw the book. Anyhow, Leminda, in the middle of the book, you could know Elef v'chomesh meya maftechen, 1,500 keys. The law is masron liloi kadishi, which weren't even given to the holy angels. V'chula istimu bey, and everything is hidden in this book, besafra, in this book. Ad demata leila adam, till Adam got hold of it. And kivan demata legabe de Adam, once Adam got it, the malachim, who didn't know that wisdom, they came knocking on Adam's door and they said, teach us what it says in the book. So the malachim, the angels of heaven, descended to Adam and they asked him, what's going on? Havu miskanshi malachim would gather, Eloi, the eternal, the celestial angels, leminda, to find out, ulamishman, to hear from Adam, what does it say in the book? So this was a gift Adam was given that even the angels in heaven didn't know what it said. Vahava army, the angel said, Rumal Shemaim Elikim Eibishter, you're beyond the heavens. Al Kolars Kavedecha, your honor is on the earth. It's a pasuk in Tehillim. But what they were saying was, what does it mean your honor is on the earth? The deepest secrets of godliness are in a book which is on planet Earth. The heavens, the angels didn't have it. Ba b'shait at that time, Isra Mizla Gabe Hadraniel Malacha Kadisha. There's another angel, Hadraniel. The armor lay Adam, and he told Adam, you have a gun is your kara demarach. Why are you spilling all the secrets? You're telling the angels everything. There's a reason why they don't know. The Eibishter wants you to know and you alone. The law yisyav reshusa li'loi leminda b'yikara demarach. There was no permission given to the celestial angels. There's a reason they don't know. The fact that you're coming to your door should stay that way. They should be knocking, but you shouldn't answer. Bar ant, except for you. V'have imei tamir v'gon is ahu sifra. So Adam kept the sefer close to him. It was his prized possession. Ad nafik Adam, until he left from Gan Eden, Ginsa de Eden. Now, he was only created for a few hours till he was sent out of Gan Eden.
This is all a few hours.
Unless you say that those few hours were more than just a few hours. But Pasha says it's just a few hours. A lot can happen, right?
You want to say by result that if you, in an hour, you could learn what you learned in 80 years?
Right. When his soul went to heaven. When he was sleeping. Right, but yep. He said in order to explain it to someone, it would take him 60 years to explain it to that fellow. I don't know who that fellow was. It's like there was a gvir and a poor man there speaking, and the gvir says, He was, I had a property that if I would start my car and drive my car, I could drive for 5 hours. I still wouldn't have come to the end of my property. And the poor man says, yeah, I used to have a car like that too. So the 60 years, you don't know who exactly. Obviously this was one of the Arizal's great students. So obviously he was a great man. And let's continue. Yeah, because Adam Rishon was looking in the book, and he was using it every day to know the secrets of his Creator. Vizgalyan leidozin Eloin, and it was revealed to him great secrets. Madalo yodu shamasha Eloin, that the great angels did not know. Now this is talking about before the sin, and it says every day.
So it wasn't a few hours.
I don't know. I don't know what it means. What should I tell you? I don't know.
I think it's metaphorically all the time.
Yeah, perhaps.
Isn't Kabbalah, especially Zohar, hints from the Torah? Where is this? Like it's brought out from the actual psukim?
It's like any medrash.
So where do you get this from?
That's what we're talking about.
You can't stam open a Zohar and then find the pasuk. First, the Zohar is like any medrash. It quotes psukim and then it gives drushes. It's hinted to, like every medrash is somehow hinted to. It's not just that. Torah Shabbat Peh is also somehow hinted to in all the psukim. You have to go break your head to find out how. Kivan Dechata, once he sinned, Va'avar al Pikuda Demare, he transgressed the mitzvah of his master. Parach, Hahu Safra Minei, the book flew away from him. Hava Adam Tafich al Reisha, he was beating his head, whacking his head. Ubach, he was crying. It sounds like more than for the sin, he was crying on the fact he lost his book. Va'al b'mei Gichin, he went into a river. The Gichin is one of the 4 rivers in Parshas Bereshis. Ad kadle, until his neck. And the maya avdin gufei chalodin, the water caused little dense, little perforations in his body. Vishtani ziv, he looked different. Nebuch, so Adam was really suffering for the fact that he missed his book. So b'shaita, at that time, Hashem hinted to Raphael, give back the book to Adam. Nebuch, the guy's suffering, give him back the book. V'asivle, he returned Ahusaf for that book. Ubeihav mishtadl Adam, and Adam spent his whole life with that book. Va'anach leila sheisper, he gave it to his son Sheis. V'chein l'chol inun, told us all the generations, the 10 generations, ad demot till Avram got this book. Ubeihav yodel istakola b'yikora demot, and that's how Avram knew how to gaze at the glory of Hashem. V'ha'itmar, and it was said that it was also given to Chanoich. L'chanoich isyav le'safra, Chanoich got the book. Now he just said before that all the people between Adam and Avram got the book. That includes Chanoich. Chanoich was the 7th generation from Adam. But he points out Chanoich had it. Vistakel minei b'ikori lo, and through that book, that's how Chanoich reached all the wisdom that he reached. We know Chanoich, even while he was alive, he spent much time in heaven. He was going back and forth. And it says in the Zohar, the wisdom that he got was from this book. Now, the malach that is appointed upon these secrets of heaven is known as Raziel HaMalach. That's what the Zohar says. There is a sefer today known as Raziel HaMalach, and the Rebbe encouraged people should have it in their homes. And the question is, does this sefer known as Raziel HaMalach have any correlation to this Zohar? In other words, is that the same sefer? Is that mamish the same sefer? That would be like, you'd think, people talk about it more. It would be like...
I have a question. This is like one of the first people on earth. There was no written language, but he knew how to read.
That's the question.
Adam was smarter than the angels, it says in Medrash. Adam was born with... When God created him, he created him with all, incredible wisdom. He was fully functioning in all other areas, and God created him with...
There was no language, there was no written language.
There was.
Lashon Kodesh, the Hebrew God created already from...
First thing.
Yeah, God created him with that wisdom.
This is all before they said that?
It says in Chumash that all of the animals came to Adam for him to give them names in Hebrew. That means he spoke the language. And he knew, not just that, but he knew exactly what names to give to each animal. Yeah.
If the Rosila Wicked Sefer we have today is not the Sefer, who wrote it?
Okay, so the Raziel HaMalach Sefer we have today. So Reb Nachman of Breslov, he says very powerfully that it's a different sefer completely. It's some of the ideas in Raziel, the sefer Raziel HaMalach speaks about secrets of heaven. So we nicknamed it Raziel HaMalach because he's the Malach that's on top of those secrets. Even when the Rebbe spoke about the sefer, he mentioned it from hundreds of years ago.
It was written in Provence, no?
So, the Ibn Ezra quotes a sefer Raziel HaMalach. There is a lot of speculation. Most believe what we have today is not the exact sefer. The question is if parts of it come from the sefer, and that's why the sefer today has its name. Many believe the sefer was written by someone on the sheet here, in the Kabbalists of the Chassid, the third one of the Chassidei Ashkenaz, Rabbi Elazar Vermeiser. He wrote many, many works of Kabbalah. One of them is Soidei Razia, secrets, and many ideas of his sefer Soidei Razia, Raziel HaMalach, overlap, and therefore many believe that this sefer either is from him or was very much affected by his works. It remains a shaila. Like I said, the Ibn Ezra, who was before Rabbi Elazar of Worms, quotes the sefer Raziel HaMalach. So, I don't know. It remains an open discussion. We move on to other Sfarim because we want to get a kind of general knowledge over here. So far we mentioned Sefer Yetzirah. We mentioned Raziel HaMalach. There's another sefer called Sefer HaRozim, the Book of Secrets. Sefer HaRozim is a book, also speaks a lot about angels, it speaks there about magic, some voodoo, witchcraft stuff. Therefore many were, uncomfortable learning it, but there was a tradition, in fact, on one of the early prints on the front page of the Sefer, it says, these secrets are sourced in what Noach learned on the Teva by the same Raziel HaMalach who taught Adam. The fact that Raziel taught Adam is a Zoya, that's we saw in number 1. The fact that Raziel HaMalach taught Noach is another tradition. I don't know where it's first base, but what do you think Noach was busy doing on the Teva for a year? In fact, the Rebbe has a whole sikha that when the year of the Mabul ceased, Noach had to receive a new instruction from Hashem to leave the Teva. Why did Hashem have to convince him to leave the Teva? He wouldn't leave on his own. And the Rebbe says, no, Noach didn't want to leave. The experience he had on the Teva was so sublime and spiritual, he knew when he opens that door, he's coming back to planet Earth. One of the things he was doing on the Teva is he was being taught secrets of the Torah, secrets of creation, Kabbalah, from Raziel HaMalach. And that is the origin of this book known as Sefer HaRozim. Sefer, the Book of Secrets. So that's another Sefer. That's another Sefer HaRozim. Amongst the Tanoim, even before Rabbi Akiva, there's a fellow, Rab Nechunya ben Hakona. Rab Nechunya ben Hakona, he wrote the Ona B'Koyach that we say every day. We don't just say it once a day, we say it again and again. We say it before Shachris and Mincha, by Kriyish Malamita, we say it by Sfiras Omer. Ona B'Koyach, which has 42 words corresponding to the 42 letters of Hashem's name, was written by Nechunya ben Hakana, who was a master Mekubal in the times of the Tanoim. There are 3 Sfarim which are attributed to him. Most Orthodox Yidden believe he wrote the Sfarim. If you ask Gershom Shalom or many of his students and this and that, they believe these 3 Sfarim started much later. But what are the 3 Sfarim? One is called Sefer HaBohir. Sefer HaBohir, the book of brightness. And the Chassidus quotes from the Sefer HaBohir. It's a very authentic book. And the Fruma tradition is that it comes from the Nechunya ben Hakona. 2 other Sfarim, less known, are Sefer HaKona. That's easy to remember. It has his name. And Sefer HaTmuna. Sefer HaTmuna.
Hidden or
Sefer HaTmuna even speaks about Gilgulim.
Sorry.
The idea there that, anyways, what did you ask?
Tmuna means picture? Or
Yeah, Tmuna picture. No, Tmuna picture. No, with the tough. Anyhow, so those books are also, according to our belief that they were written by a Tana, so then they would have been extant, maybe rare, but they would have been in manuscript 1,000 years ago as well. There's another few Sforim that we have to mention. One is what you mentioned, the Pirkei Hecholos. There's a book called the Pirkei Hecholos from the Tana Rabbi Yishmael. In Pirkei Hecholos, it's quoted very often, and that definitely goes back. I think over here many more agree that it goes back 2,000 years, and that was available for the end of the Tanoim and the Amoraim, I guess, for those that were able to get the manuscripts. The Pirkei Hecholos from Rabbi Yishmael. It also discusses his ascent to heaven and the angels and all types of spiritual things. There's another sefer, and this is the last one we'll mention from the old books. It's called Shiur Koima. Shiur Koima. Right, yeah. So Shiur Koima speaks about the Eibush in terms of limbs of a human body, which is dangerous information if it's understood literally. It has to be taken as a metaphor. Listen, in Chumash we speak about Hashem's finger, Hashem's eyes, Hashem's hands, but the Eibush, the hope that we would understand is a metaphor, as the Rambam elaborates in Moreh Nevuchim, how it's only a metaphor, and etc. Shiur Koima speaks about these topics, and therefore if someone misunderstands or misinterprets it, he can come to all types of strange ideas that God has a body, God has a form, and is limited, etc., etc. But if it's understood Kabbalistically, it could be understood correctly. This Sefer Shiur Koima also goes back to the times of the Tanoim, and many say also is written by Rabbi Yishmael. We know it existed at least 1,200 years ago, because Reb Sadia Gaon, 1,200 years ago, 1,100 years ago, addresses the Sefer. So this has been around a long time. The Rambam's take on it, in the beginning, the Rambam supported the Sefer, but later on the Rambam wrote a letter where he dismisses it, debunks the whole Sefer. He doesn't believe it was written by any of the Tanoim. It was written by a foreign hand, and it's dangerous stuff.
Not even Jewish.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Bechlal might not have a Jewish source at all, correct. So the Rambam, in the end, he really... And this Sefer was very hard to get, but it was printed a number of decades ago. One of these Kabbalistic professors, or at least professors in the history of Kabbalah, found the manuscripts, got which one, and he printed it. So that's another Sefer that goes way back. So what we have so far is, we said Sefer Yetzirah, that's undoubted, it goes way back a long time. Our tradition is all the way to Avram. The Ruziel HaMalach that we have may go back to Adam, may not. It may have some ideas from Adam's Sefer. Yeah. There was the Sefer HaRozim from Noach. There was Nechunya ben Akona's Sforim, Sefer HaBoyer, Sefer HaKona, Sefer HaTmuna. Then we mentioned the Pirkei Hecholos from Rabbi Yishmael. And then we mentioned Shiur Koima, which also is attributed to Rabbi Yishmael. Okay, so where are we going with all this? Like I mentioned, after the Gemara was sealed for the next 500 years, we don't know that much bechlal of the times of the Gaonim, of the Yidden in Bavel. But in the times of the Rishonim, about 1,000 years ago, we begin to know much more, both about the halachas and the people, but also about the secrets and the Kabbalah as well. So if you go to the paper of the names, if you please will. So these are Kabbalists of the medieval times. And I divided them into three groups. The first are the Kabbalists of Germany. The second are the Kabbalists of France. The third are the Kabbalists of Spain. And they're all pretty much in the same time, from 1100 to 1300, that time, the times of the Rishonim. So I just want to quickly go through this with you. And then we'll see the whole discussion of the Zohar, and we'll see some interesting things. Hopefully we won't shake the boat too much. And even if we do, hopefully we won't capsize the boat. Chasidei Ashkenaz, there were a group of Kabbalists in Germany, known as the Chasidei Ashkenaz, the pious people of Germany. And over here I wrote down a dynasty of three, even though there were more. There were people before, the people later, but there's a famous dynasty of three of them. And we begin with Reb Shmuel Hanavi. He was known as Shmuel HaChassid or Shmuel Hanavi. He's living in Germany. His father's name was Reb Kloinimus from the famous Kloinimus family, which originated in Italy. And then for some reason they moved to Germany in the 11th century. So, and they really were a pillar of the beginning of German Jewry. Even before Rabbeinu Gershom came there, around the same time. So, Reb Shmuel Hanavi, what do we know about him? Not that much. He was the father of Reb Yehuda HaChassid, who's the next person on the sheet. That's his big yichus. We know a couple stories. First of all, Shmuel Hanavi made a golem. He's one of the people that is recorded in Sfarim that he made a golem. And he used to travel both with his golem and also with a lion. He had a pet lion. He was, the golem wasn't, a bodyguard. You can't just go with one bodyguard. He needed a lion too. And he actually once met up with Rabbeinu Tam, who was alive then in France. Rabbeinu Tam was born in the year 1100, around the same age. But one story that's found in Sfarim is that this Shmuel HaChassid, he was mamish a spiritual man. He barely ate, he barely slept. That's why he was called one of the Chasidei Ashkenaz, the pious people. To be part of this group, you had to fast 2 days Yom Kippur, by the way. If you didn't fast 2 days Yom Kippur, you could not call yourself a Chassid in those days. Reb Shmuel Hanavi befriended a few Galachim, Goyish priests, lived in Germany. And these guys were major sorcerers. This is the tradition. Black magic, which is no longer available as it once was. And they took Shmuel HaChassid, once to the forest. And they said, let's see what you can do, and we'll show you what we can do. So he said, all right, I have a friend, his name is Rabbi Yaakov. He lives far away, hundreds of miles away. He has a certain manuscript I have never been able to get hold of. If you can, bring that to me in the next 3 days. Now, this place was far, far away. There was no way to naturally travel there and back within 3 days. If you can somehow get it for me within 72 hours, then I'll know that you have something going over there. So they took him to the forest, and the three of them, they drew circles, and they had this voodoo and black magic, names of demons and kishuf and whatever they did. One of these galachim then became unconscious. He was lying down. And his soul was traveling to retrieve the sefer. Anyhow, the time comes for the guy to return. He has the book. His friends are trying to revive him. They can't revive him. They're drawing circles and they're incantations and everything. They try everything. They can't bring him back. It's never happened before. And they scream, Reb Shmuel, what are you doing? And he smiles and he says, you want your friend to come back? You got to agree to a few conditions. And he made some conditions with them which they agreed to. And Shmuel let go of his spell, so to speak, that was barring the soul from returning to the body. And at that moment, the guy opened his eyes, and he had the book. He had the manuscripts. He had the sefer. That's the story they say about Shmuel Hanavi. Fascinating stuff. Anyhow, he has a son, Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid is born around mid-1100s, and Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid is very famous for his Sefer HaChasidim, which has the most interesting information and stories there. We saw a piece last week about what he says about asking halachic shilas from women. Not to repeat that now. But Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid was so great. The Baal Shem Tov once heard something Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid said, and the Baal Shem Tov responded or commented, it can't be that man had a human mother. Can't be. To say such wisdom, it can't be had a human mother. Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, he wrote at Savo, like a last will and testament, where he has many strange instructions there. And one of them is one should not polish their shoe before they go on a trip. And somebody once asked the Alter Rebbe, what's the meaning behind this? And the Alter Rebbe said, If I were to explain the meaning behind this instruction, I would have to write a work bigger than the entire Shalah, just to explain this one thing of Yehuda HaChassid. He was otherworldly. He fasted every day of his life. He only ate at night. Even Shabbos, he wouldn't eat. Shabbos day, he wouldn't eat. From morning till night, he wouldn't eat. The Shulchan Aruch says, Shabbos day fast. You can't fast on Shabbos. Oinek Shabbos. It says in Yeshaya, V'karasel Shabbos Sani, you have to enjoy. But the Shulchan Aruch says, but if somebody, by eating by day, they're going to be changing their usual diet and therefore will result with stomach pains. So for them, pleasure is to fast. And the source is Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. For him, Oinek Shabbos was not to eat. If he would eat, it would cause severe stomach pain because he never ate by day. Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid had a student, Rabbi Lazar of Vermaisa of Worms. And he's like number 3 in this chain of the Chasidei Ashkenaz. Rabbi Lazar of Worms, he's known as the Reikeach, Rabbi Lazar Reikeach. And he wrote many, many Sfarim. Lots of gematrias, lots of secrets and stuff like that. He was also a big Baal Nigla as well, but particularly in Kabbalah. And like I said, there are those that attribute the Raziel HaMalach that we have today to him, because it's so similar to some of the other things he writes in his Sfarim. Those are the Chasidei Ashkenaz. The Kabbalists of France. Who were the Kabbalists of France? The Ravid, the famous Ravid that argues on the Rambam. He argued on many people. Rabbi Avraham ben David. He lives in France. He was a major Kabbalist. As he writes himself in a number of places, he writes, when he argues on the Rambam, he says, how do I know what I'm saying is true? In one place he says, Kach niglali misoid Hashem lireov. I know this because God's secrets appear to those that fear him. In other words, he knows spiritually. In one place he says, Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit has appeared in our base medrash, and therefore we know the pshat is ABC. There are some poskim who believe the Ravid was just being poetic. He didn't really mean that he experienced spirituality. But many take it at face value, because you'll see what the Arizal said about the Ravid. He was a major Kabbalist, and Eliyahu Hanavi appeared to him, and therefore there's no reason not to take the Ravid at face value. Literally, he knew some of these halachas from spiritual revelation. His son, Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nor, Rabbi Yitzchak the blind. Sagi Nor means a lot of light. It's a euphemism. It's how the Gemara refers to someone who can't see. He has great vision. Rabbi Yitzchak the blind was the Ravid's son, and he was one of the most famous Kabbalists of the Rishonim. His father, the Ravid, is more famous for his halachas that he said than for the mysticism. But his son, Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nor, is famous as a mystic. And the Rishonim themselves write stories about him. First of all, he would be able to come into a room of a sick person. He would take in the air and he would know if the person would live or the person would die. He would just be able to know. In addition, Rabbi Yitzchak was an expert in Gilgulim. He could look at a person and tell them if this is the first time their soul has come to this world, or if this is you've been here before. He could look at a person's face and be able to tell. Rabbi Yitzchak, what?
Couldn't see.
Technicality.
He didn't have physical sight, but in order to feel, the forehead had to be in front of him. Chachmas Adam Torah Panav, a person's wisdom shines on their face. So even though he couldn't see, he needs to be in the vicinity of the face to be able to feel the person's soul. Your soul,
Energy.
the energy comes through your face, your forehead, even just to be there, just to feel it.
Presence.
But it's a good question. Rabbi Yitzchak taught Kabbalah to many people. 2 of them are Reb Ezra and Reb Uzriel. And then they in turn taught Kabbalah to the Ramban. And you have the years of the Ramban over here.
Rabbi, I thought the Rambam studied under the Ravid.
The Ravid, if you look at the years, the Ramban was 4 years old when the Ravid passed away. These years are accurate.
Yeah?
The Ramban, I wrote them. If I wasn't sure, I wrote Ishur or something like that. But the Raavad passed away. The truth is 1198 might be off by a year or two, but not much. The Ramban was definitely a child when the Raavad passed away. According to these dates, 4, even if they're off by a year or two, he was still a child. Now go back to the papers, go to number 2. Go to number 2 on the papers. Number 2 is from the Rikanti, Menachem Rikanti. Menachem Rikanti was a standalone Kabbalist in Italy in the 1200s. So he wasn't really, we don't even know who his teachers were. Neither his students. He was kind of a standalone Kabbalist. In his commentary to Parshas Nosa, he's speaking about the Duchening, when a Kohen Duchens, and he gives a few explanations, and then look what he says in number 2. Ha-Pirish Arishon, the first Pirish I gave, Hudas ha-Chosid Reb Yitzchak. This is the opinion of the pious man, Reb Yitzchak ben Harav Zal. The Rav refers to the Raavad. Reb Yitzchak the son. Shahaya Nigla Loy Eliyahu Zal. Because Eliyahu Hanavi himself came to Reb Yitzchak the blind. Ki Nigla, first of all, Eliyahu came LeReb David. The Raavad's father is David. So you have David, the son Avram, the son of David, the Raavad, and his son Reb Yitzchak the blind. Ki Nigla LeReb David. Eliyahu came to Reb David, Av Bezdin, V'lamad loy chachmas ha-Kabbalah, and he taught Kabbalah to the Raavad's father. Umasra lebnoi ha-Raavad, and the Raavad's father gave it to the Raavad. V'gam loy nigla, and also to the Raavad Eliyahu appeared. V'hu, and then the Raavad does the same to his child. Masara lebnoi, he gives it to the Yitzchak Saginor, shaloi ra ma'olam, who never saw it. He didn't lose his vision later in life. He was born without the capacity to see. V'gam loy nigla, and also to him Eliyahu appeared. So Eliyahu appeared to all three. To Reb David, to his son Avram the Raavad, and to his son Reb Yitzchak. V'hu, and Reb Yitzchak Masara, he gave the traditions to 2 of his students, Rab Ezra Shapirish, who explained the Shir Hashirim, and the Achaz Reb Azriel. V'achar, and after them the Ramban Zal. They both taught the Ramban. So the Rikanti gives over the history that we just went through. He says it all right here. And the Rikanti wrote this in about the year 1300. Okay, so you don't have to rely on me. This is from over 700. He's almost, he's right after this whole...
Right.
He overlapped with the Ramban. The Rikanti would have been a young man when the Ramban was still alive.
You said Shmuel Hanavi was at the same time as Rabbeinu Gershom, wasn't it?
Rabbeinu Tam, yeah. Rabbeinu Gershom came in when Shmuel Hanavi's family moved to Germany. Right, yeah. Rabbeinu Gershom passes away in about the year 1040. That was when
he was
Rab Shmuel HaChassid's grandparents moved to Germany.
It's the bridge between the Goyim and the...
Right, he kind of started, German Jewry, right. Says Rikanti Vadas Hasheni, the second pshat I gave, Chidash Div Milibi. I said it's my own pshat, Mikoyach Divrei Razal, but it's based on, Chazal. V'kulon Divrei L'kim Chaim him, and all the pshatim are all the words of God, if he may say so himself about his own pshat. The Rikanti was a great Kabbalist, and so here he gives the tradition. But it's funny. The Rikanti was kind of a standalone. He was in Italy. We don't even know who his teachers were, but Chassidus quotes him. He had a whole opinion about the Eser Sfiris. The Rikanti, by the way, quotes the Zohar often, and he was about the year 1300, which is important, as we'll see. Okay. If you go back... Okay, we got to get a move on. Let's look at number 3 for a second, because we're all leading to the Zohar. We're going to be leading to the Zohar over here. That's what you all came for, right? And I hope I don't disappoint. And if I do, just don't tell me. Number 3 is from the Seder HaDoros, a story about the Ramban and one of his teachers. We don't know which teacher. Some say it was Reb Ezra or Reb Azriel that we saw taught the Ramban. But let's see number 3. When the Ramban was younger, he didn't learn... The Ramban didn't have an interest in Kabbalah. Kimat shaloi ohav zois chacham. The Ramban was not interested in Kabbalah when he was younger. Ad shebo elav zokin chacham gadol beKabbalah. Until one day, a great master of Kabbalah knocks on the Ramban's door. he sees that Ramban he loved to learn, and he was such a Chacham Gadol, such a great sage. So this stranger tells the Ramban, "Can I teach you Kabbalah?" But the Ramban was uninterested. One day, this Chacham somehow snuck into a house of a parlor of harlots.
Snuck in.
That harem, it says somehow he snuck in. Vayave hachatzeira, he went into the inner courtyard. Vayit Pesur, and this rabbi, this Kabbalist, this great Kabbalist, right? He was caught. V'donu l'sreifa, they were going to make an auto defer, going to burn him on Shabbos Kodesh. Now, why such a severe punishment? In some other sources, they say he didn't go into a house of harlots. He walked into a church and broke all the idols. Either way, he was thrown in jail. Vayivoda hadavar l'Ramban. No, it's all the same thing. The Ramban found out. V'loi rotza lahalis. The Ramban had connections in the government, but he didn't want to. The Ramban thought this guy was a quack. V'achochem atofus, the chochem who's in jail, he sends to the Ramban to come on that Shabbos, and the Ramban came. And the prisoner, the Kabbalist, tells the Ramban, he screams, "Why didn't you help me get out of here?" And the Ramban says, "What do you mean? What did you do? Why did you do what you did?" So he excused himself, he said, "It's all false. It's all false. I never happened, and I trust in God. God will save me." And he tells the Ramban, "Please, when you eat shalosh seudas, prepare an extra seat for me." The Ramban thinks this guy's getting killed Shabbos, 8 a.m. He's coming to me he's telling me he's coming for shalosh seudas. The guy is mamish off the wall. Bayom Shabbos Kodesh, on Shabbos, hoitziu hachacham b'chachmas ha-Kabbalah b'shuk. This wise Kabbalist, they took him out to the market to publicly burn him, Lisref, to burn him. And they threw him into the fire. But this Chacham did some practical Kabbalistic tricks, and he exchanged himself with a donkey. They threw a donkey instead, and somehow no one realized. It was a big fire. You never know. It could be that he exchanged himself with one of the goyim, but when they printed the sefer, they didn't want to say that, so they wrote a donkey. It could be donkey as a mushal. No, because you have to be careful what you write, because the goyim, they checked over many exactly what.
They'll burn you.
Exactly. So they wrote donkey. My feeling is it wasn't really a donkey, and this is just a cover up. But I don't know. I wasn't there. Either way. Anyhow, so the guy escapes. And he goes to the Ramban after Mincha. He comes to Ramban's house for shalosh seudas. The Ramban was making Kiddush. I guess Ramban was eating late. He's making Kiddush, and as he says, Baomer pri agaf, and the door opens, and the guy comes in and says, Amen. And then Ramban's almost drops his becher, right? Like the guy's actually here.
So the Jews were going to burn him?
No. The goyim. No. The goyim. And then the Kabbalist says to the Ramban, now you see that Kabbalah is not a joke. So the Ramban was all excited to learn it.
They go through fire.
Yeah, all right, yeah. And then the Ramban, from then on, he morning and evening, he was learning Kabbalah until he became the greatest Kabbalist of his time. This is written 300 years ago by the Seder Hadoros. He doesn't say who was this Kabbalist, but many say it was Reb Ezra or Reb Uzriel, one of the two people that we saw, who the Ramban learned from in this wondrous chain, right? The Ramban learned from them. They learned from Reb Yitzchak the blind, who got from his father the Rav, who got from Eliyahu, etc. So they say this was Reb Ezra or Reb Uzriel, one of the two, and this is how he got the Ramban on board. Fine. What does it have to do with the Zohar?
Wait, did he do it on purpose to get the Ramban's attention?
It's anyone's guess.
Now you're becoming a conspiracy theorist.
Well,
He says he did nothing. He told the Ramban the whole thing was a fabrication. He was framed. Who knows? Who knows?
Well, if he's a Kabbalist, he can
Yeah.
do whatever.
The real deal Kabbalists from way back. Anyhow, please go back to the list of names. And now we're going to turn our attention towards the Zohar. But a bit of background. The Kabbalists of Spain. The truth is Ramban himself lived in Spain, but he was in the northern Spain, in Girona and Barcelona, and also he spent much of his youth in France, and it could be that's where he learned Kabbalah as well. So I listed him in the Kabbalists of France because he's just part of that chain.
He's an Ashkenazi, basically.
The Marshal says, the Ramban, Afal pi shahaya Sfardi mikol mokum hikir es ha'emes. Although the Rambam was Sfardi, he still recognized the truth. What the Marshal means, it's I'm taking out of context. What he means is, although the Ramban was a Sfardi, he realized that the true way of learning Gemara was from the Tosfos. That they plummeted the real depth, even more than the great Rishonim of Spain. Anyhow, the Kabbalists of Spain. So we have another little dynasty of three people. What's interesting is Bechlal, historically, whenever there was a big movement, there were usually three people at the head. Even by the Greek philosophers, we had a long shir about that Hanukkah time, but all the pre-Socrates philosophers and the post. And you also there's a three generation. You have Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They're like the kings. The three most famous and probably most influential today philosophers of Greece are those three. The three greatest artists in the beginning of the Renaissance, right? Also Michelangelo, Leonardo, and Raphael, also a group of three. Even the three greatest composers, right? They also give a list of three, right? Bach and Mozart, exactly. It's funny that there's and in Torah as well. In fact, the Shalah speaks about the greatest of the Kabbalists, not the medieval times, but from the post-medieval, the Achronim. He gives a list of three. He says, Rab Meir ibn Gabbai, the Avodas HaKodesh, Rab Moshe Cordovero, and his student, the Arizal. And the Shalah says three. These were the three main Kabbalists, closer to his time. But either way, in the Kabbalists of Spain, we also have a list of three. Number one, and these three are teacher, student, but they were all close in age. Interestingly, they were very close in age. The first is Avram Abulafia, or Avram Abulafia, also known as Avram Horoya, Avram the Seer. When I was a bocher, I became infatuated with him because his life story, was so bizarre, intriguing, exciting, sad, everything.
I noticed you give a day of death. He disappeared.
Right, that's why I said 1291-ish.
Yeah.
Ish, right. He is from Spain.
200 years.
What?
He lived almost 200 years.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. It's meant to be a 12. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. He was born in the early 1200s. It says 11. That is a typo. A typo. Avram Abulafia. The Abulafia was a famous Sephardic family. There was Tudrus Abulafia, Rab Meir Abulafia. For hundreds of years, one of the most notable Sephardic families. You have the Azulais and Abulafia going all the way back. This guy is part of the family, Avram Abulafia. He begins his life when he was young. He had a thirst for the mysticism. And he got hold of the Rambam's Moreh Nevuchim, which is philosophy, not Kabbalah, but he loved it. He was a major fan of the Rambam. Although he later became a huge Kabbalist, to him, Moreh Nevuchim was not a contradiction to Kabbalah at all, which has been a major issue amongst Kabbalists for hundreds of years, if philosophy is a good thing or not a good thing. Avram Abulafia was very pro Moreh Nevuchim. In fact, he wrote a commentary called Moira HaMoira, the guide of the guide, because the guide itself needs a guide to take you through it, right? The guide of the guide, Moira HaMoira. Anyhow, he learns Kabbalah from a few different people, and he almost starts his new path of teaching Kabbalah. That the purpose of Kabbalah is not just an academic pursuit, it's to actually see the Eibishter, to commune with God, not just to daven to Him, but for the Eibishter to commune with you, to receive real prophecy. And he spoke about prophecies that he had. He had a prophecy in the middle of the 1200s that he was supposed to go to Rome and convert the Pope. He ends up traveling to Rome. He came to Rome. The Pope was not in Rome. He was in a holiday house somewhere. And the Pope heard this rabbi is coming. He said, if the rabbi gets anywhere 500 feet near the house, and that's it. We're going to kill him publicly, execute him. He wasn't a spol. He traveled. He traveled to the Pope. He located him. When he came there, two things happened. One thing is the Pope suddenly died. The second thing is he was cast into prison. What happened first, what happened second is not clear, and it's hard to know exactly what happened first, what happened second. Either way, he was let out, he wasn't killed. And he took this as a sign from the Eibishter that what he's doing is correct. And he gathered a group of students around him and he taught Kabbalah openly. He spoke about Golus, we're at the end of exile, Mashiach's coming. His students believed, he has many svarim. His students believed he was Mashiach. Some say he even hinted to the fact he was Mashiach. And that made a huge ruckus. And he claimed to have Nevuah's prophecy. At the time, there was a great rabbi in Spain, in Barcelona, the Rashba. The Rashba was living then in Spain. And the Rashba was a Kabbalist too, but he was known as a rabbi. You know, he was a functioning rabbi, a great rabbi in Spain at the time. This is in the end of the 1200s. And he heard about this. In the Rashba's eyes, the guy was a quack, saying he had prophecy. The Rashba wrote letters, sharp letters, really putting Avram Abulafia in his place, literally plucking the rug from underneath him. When world got wind of the Rashba's letters, most people gave Avram Abulafia the cold shoulder. He lost all of his students. He moved to Sicily, which was kind of out of the limelight, you know. And he had a big yeshiva in Sicily, in the island of Sicily. But the Rashba's letters, they did their damage. And he really couldn't get a big following. Even within Sicily himself, people gave him a hard time. He had to move to an island just south of Sicily. There's a small island there, I forgot the name. No, the small, I forgot that. Anyhow, but either way, it was this was around the year 1290, 1291, and he disappears off the map. We don't know where he's buried. It was a very sad end. He was an exilee forced to flee. Nobody wanted to give him the time or day. We have a letter of his that he wrote to a friend. It's a printed letter we have today, where he says, I know the great Rashba condemned me for ABC. He says, I'm innocent of all of it. You know, he really vindicated himself in this letter, but it didn't help. It didn't help. And he passed away. We don't even know where he was last seen, where he's buried. It's very sad. It happens to be that Reb Chaim Vital, the Arizal's great student, quotes his Sfarim. He quotes from Avram Avli openly. He quotes verbatim, quoting him openly. Not just that, the great Kabbalist before the Arizal, Reb Moshe Cordovero, he openly quotes from Avram Abulafia as well. So the Chidon notes this. The Chidon, one of his Sfarim, says that in Avram Abulafia's times, he was an outcast and he died as a wandering exilee, as a nomad with nowhere to go. But a little later, the greatest Kabbalist picked him back up. And therefore, what?
I don't think they attribute it to him. Like, Chaim Vital doesn't mention Abulafia's name.
He quotes the Sefer. It's word for word from him.
Right. But I don't think he
It's in Shari. We could check it out. It's in Shari Kedusha. He quotes it. We could check if he mentions his name. But it's he mentions the name of the Sefer, if I'm not mistaken, and it comes from him. Listen, those details we could check up. We could, fine. Either way, Avram Abulafia, so it's a fascinating story, you know. He was a self-proclaimed Mashiach, a master Kabbalist. He was put in Chayrim. He dies as a nomad. Hundreds of years later, he has a resurrection. Fascinating fellow. He has a student by the name of Yosef Gigatila. Yosef Gigatila also wrote many works of Kabbalah, and I wrote two of them here because these works are studied today. In fact, Reb Chaim Volozhiner, the student of the Vilna Gaon, said, there's a chiyuv to learn the whole Torah, right? But you don't have to learn the entire Torah. You have to learn Tanakh, you have to learn Halacha, and then you have to learn, the basic reasons behind Halacha. But when it comes to the element of Kabbalah, how much do you have to learn? There's so much out there. And Reb Chaim Volozhiner said, as a psak, halachic psak, Zohar and the Shari Oira from Yosef Gigatila. When you do that, you have fulfilled your command of learning, of knowledge of Torah as far as the Soid is concerned, as far as Kabbalah is concerned. Yosef Gigatila there's actually a number of psakim in halacha that come from him. We say Amen Yeheshmei Rabbim. We say all the way till Yisborich. Ashkenazim, we go to Ashkenazic shul, they stop before Yisborich, right? And they all look at the Lubavitcher who finishes to say Yisborich. So you tell them, Yosef Gigatil is the one who says you go all the way to Yisborich. The fact that with Kiddush Levana, the Alter Rebbe says in the Siddur to wait till the seventh day, many people are not careful about that. It comes from Yosef Gigatila. So these, anyhow, Yosef Gigatila, there's a story, he was very ill. He was worried he was about to pass. And he loses consciousness. And he sees himself being judged in heaven. This story is quoted by the Charedim 500 years ago. So this is a real authentic story. He has a vision that he's being judged and his mitzvahs and averis were equal. And all of a sudden he wakes up, and he was ill at the time. He screams, "Get me my tefillin! I need to do one more mitzvah!" Grabbed his tefillin, donned his tefillin. The Charedim brings the story. Anyhow, he is a student, Moshe de Leon. Moshe Ibn Shem Tov was his last name, and de Leon, known as Moshe de Leon. He uncovers the Zohar. Now, when did he live? We don't know the exact years of his birth or of his death, but this is roughly. He was born in the 1240s and he passed away sometime in the early 1300s. There's speculation. In fact, there's a debate of almost 20 years exactly. But roughly we have an idea. In the end of the 1200s, he uncovers, according to his claim, he uncovers the Zohar. Where did he find it? Some say he found it in Turkey, somewhere in Turkey, where it was hidden. I don't know. But his claim was very clear. His claim was that he found old manuscripts, which had been sitting there for who knows how long, decayed, corroded, So he couldn't, he had to copy it on a fresh manuscript, fresh ink, fresh paper. And he had to make a seder because he found all these scrolls. Some of it probably wasn't legible, something, So he had to pluck out whatever he could.
Geniza?
What?
You found it in a Geniza?
Buried somewhere, yeah. Geniza, somewhere buried. Who knows where?
He's an archaeologist too.
Now,
What's the Zohar published? What's the Zohar?
now here's the Zohar has the Zohar has many parts to it.
It wasn't printed at once.
Right, yeah. Right. There's also, if you look at every parsha you have, there's the Zohar. There's in the Zohar, there's almost like 10 parts. There's the Zohar. There's something called Medrash Hanelim, the hidden Medrash. There's something called the Sisrei Torah, the secrets of Torah. Something called Rozei de Rozen, secrets of secrets. There's a big chunk called the Tosefta, the part that was added. There's the Idra, there's two Idras, which are when, the Idra Rabbah and the Idra Zutta, which is a gathering. When all the Chachamim would gather together, and that was recorded. And then there's the Tikkunei Zohar, there's the Zohar Chadosh, there's so many parts to it. The Raya Mehemen, so the Raya Mehemen is on all the mitzvahs. So whenever you have a parsha that speaks about a mitzvah, the Raya Mehemen is going to dissect the mitzvah, Kabbalistically, but speak about the mitzvah.
Did he uncover all these parts, or not necessarily?
L'cheira not. But like I mentioned, the Rikanti, who passed away in the early 1300s, he quotes in his Sefer from the Zohar. He lives in Italy. So either he got, a quick copy from, Moshe de Leon uncovers it in, let's say, 1280, 1290. Okay, it could be. It took a few years until it was it was very exciting because according to our tradition that is from Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, which is Moshe de Leon's claim. Moshe de Leon claimed the entire time this is from Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. And according to that tradition, people knew that there was something, people knew there was a medrash of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. People had known about it, right? Especially those individuals in each that generation that learned Kabbalah knew that there was a medrash of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. There's that's halachic medrash, right? But they knew that there was a pneumistic medrash of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, and the issue was no one knew where it was. It was it was like an enigma. There was a legend, And then when someone claimed to have found it, you can imagine the excitement, you can imagine the electricity. And that's why it makes sense that within just a couple of years, there would have been so many manuscripts. People would have traveled far to get a copy of that. So it makes sense that the Rikanti got hold of it almost right away. Now, the first one to mamish come out against the Zohar, Biksav, to write against the Zohar, was a fellow, Rabbi Eliyahu del Medigo. Eliyahu del Medigo. Del Medigo means the doctor. Medic. And Eliyahu del Medigo was born in the year 1458. So he's a long time later.
Before that, nobody came up.
Not because we don't have anything written. We have nothing written. People would have been skeptical, like always, but nothing. Nobody took responsibility to write something and sign their name. This Eliyahu del Medigo lived in Padua. He was actually a professor in the big college in Padua. He was a very learned man. He died young, in his 30s, if we have the dates correct. But he wrote a sefer called Bechinas Hadas, where he comes out and says he thinks Kabbalah is the whole Kabbalah. He doesn't know where it comes from, which religion it comes from. He doesn't think it's very Jewish. And the Zohar in particular, he says, is not from Rashbi. It's not from Rab Shimon Bar Yochai. That's what he tied it. And he died young. Now look in number 4. So did the Arizal. So did the Ramchal. Look in number 4. 38. So yeah, it's the same as Arizal. Look in number 4. Number 4, I have here a story. Okay, we're gonna fasten things up over here. This is a story from the Torah Temimah. The Baruch Epstein, the Torah Temimah, about 150 years ago, the son of the exactly. And he quotes a story in number 4. Hoya Abba, my father, Baal Aruch HaShulchan, the great halachist, Aruch HaShulchan, Mesaper told over. Ki b'meshech hayomim, at one time, Asher Asa im Harav, he came to the Tzemach Tzedek. The Aruch HaShulchan, who was a big Litvisher, visited the Tzemach Tzedek. What? Yeah, but he definitely visited. He was more pativ. He was and the Tzemach Tzedek, he wanted to speak in the Tzemach Tzedek and learning. Loi pam, not once, means more than once. Ro samuch v'nira loi sefer bechinas hadas. The Aruch HaShulchan saw on the Tzemach Tzedek's table was this sefer bechinas hadas, which is the first sefer undermining the Zohar. So you're wondering, why am I mentioning this here? The Tzemach Tzedek had it on his table. Laharav Achoiker, to the philosopher Varoif and the doctor Eliyahu from Kondaya. Kondaya is today known as Heraklion. It's a city in the Mediterranean. Yeah, sure. The Del Medigo. Right.
So
yeah.
quick.
No. V'hayanira ki arav hayamayim by the palm. It looked like the Tzemach Tzedek didn't just stop. See, sometimes people have svarim on their tables they never use, just to be there.
But keep your friends close, your enemies
exactly. But the Tzemach Tzedek was looking in the. So the Torah Temimah says, "V'zeh shehaya rav maniach sefer etzloi somoch v'nirla." Why did he have the sefer so close to him? K'moshe Ziparti, like I said. Betach hoya lo alzeh tam v'siba. It must be the Tzemach Tzedek had a reason. V'ulai maybe was to know what to argue against.
I was going to say.
K'dei ladas ma'alahashiv binyan of le'es mitzay. Because the Tzemach Tzedek had many debates. Every time he went to Petersburg, exactly, the Tzemach Tzedek, from all the Rabbeim, the Tzemach Tzedek had many debates with Reform Jews, from the Enlightenment movement, Reform Haskalah. And whenever he went to Petersburg, they were always harassing him. And that's why the Tzemach Tzedek actually wrote a book in philosophy called Sefer HaChakiri. He wrote a philosophical book proving the existence of Hashem, etc., which is not usually what Chassidus does. So the Tzemach Tzedek apparently needed to know this sefer because he knew these people were going to quote it. So he had to be well versed with the whole thing. Anyhow,
Even the Torah Temimah says
intuition over there.
Look in number 5.
At that point, though, there were other svarim already written.
Against the Zohar?
Yaakov Emden.
No. You're saying the time that Tzemach Tzedek. Yeah. Sure. We're gonna get there. Let's go. That's the guy who says the coin is to give back the money.
Yeah, all coming together.
Look at number 5 now. Number 5. Number 5 is from the Sefer. Okay, we got to get. It's from the Sefer Mogen Vitzina. Mogen Vitzina was written by a grand student of the Vilna Gaon, meaning somebody who was a student. His name was Yitzchak Isaac Chever, a very famous Kabbalist amongst the Misnagdim. He was a great Kabbalist and a great Rav. Sure. So Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chever says, you know what I think about the Bechinas Hadas, the Sefer written in the 1400s to uproot Kabbalah? V'chol dvara v'divrei havolov shel ha'mechaber Bechinas Hadas. All of the rubbish that he says, ein kedai lo hoshiv aleim. It's not even worth it to respond. Ki gam hu nimshich acher ha'isha nachriya. He was drawn after the Goyish woman. It's from a pasuk. It means foreign wisdoms. He was Eliyahu Dalmedigo, was a doctor, was a scientist. No. He was from.
You're sure it doesn't mean like what is called Catholicism?
No, the Chorah means Greek philosophy. Ubeyaldei Nochem Histapik, he was happy to have Goyish children. It means ideas that are born from foreign books. It could be he read such. I don't know. It could be he does. We don't know how far his accusation is gone. V'rachik haya, he was far from true belief. Wow.
Who's saying
This
this?
is Yitzchak Isaac Chaver, a great Kabbalist 200 years ago, saying about the Eliyahu, the doctor who wrote the Bechinas Hadas. He's a grand student of the Gaon. He was a student of Yisrael of Shklov, I think.
Okay.
I think Yisrael of Shklov.
This is a grandson of the Vilna.
A grand student. He was known by the Litvishes.
Way before him, right?
Yeah, 300. He's called the Peh Shlishi. In the Litvische world, this guy in number 5 is called the third mouth, because there are many ideas of Kabbalah from the Vilna Gaon that we only know from him. The whole Tanois of everything he says against the Chachmei Emes, against Kabbalah, Kvar nichlulu b'fi ha'ari hanoyim. It's already found in another sefer we'll get to, and the words of both of them is all rubbish. They have the same mouth, and when you destroy what the Ari Hanoyim says, you'll also destroy the Bechinas Hadas. It will be like earthenware, which has no shattered earthenware. Now, let's go to the next page because I want to just finish up over here. So, this Eliyahu Del Medigo had a great grandson, a fascinating fellow. Also had the same last name. He was called the Yosher, the straight one. Yosef Shloime Roife. Yosef Shloime, the doctor. And first of all, just to see a story about him in number 6, an absolute whopper. This guy lives in the early 1600s. He printed his El Tezeda Sefer Bechinas Hadas. So he was responsible for the damage that it did. On the other hand, he printed it together with his own Sefer, defending the Zohar. So he printed his El Tezeda's book, debunking the Zohar, and his own Sefer, supporting the Zohar. In number 6, just to follow, I'll just tell you the story, a fascinating story. In the time of the Yosher, he's known as the Yosher of Kondaya, which is the city in Crete where he's from. In his days, he had 500 students, great scholars. They started to learn philosophy. They learned Mer Nevuchim. They all became fry, each and every one of the 500. They denied the Eibishter, or at least that the Eibishter cares about what goes on in the world. And they all came to the tzaddik, the Yosher of Kandaya, and they said, listen, you don't have answers to our questions, you got to agree with us. He hears them out, and achozasoi palotzus, he's taken with dread. He said, I'm not answering you now. Well, the truth is, it says he started to debate with them, but he saw that they weren't ready for answers at that time. It wasn't going anywhere. He said, give me a little bit of time. They said, okay. The Yosher of Kandaya sent letters to some big rabbanim to come ASAP. They came to him. He told them the story. There's 500 bachrim. They've all gone fry. We got a fabreng. A fabreng isn't going to do it. We have to academically respond to their queries and questions. So he and these rabbis fasted night and day. For 3 days, 72 hours, night and day they fasted. No food, no drink. After 72 hours, the Yosher of Kandaya gets up from the ground. He says, I got to do this for God, which means he didn't daven, didn't learn for the next while, skipped tefillah, skipped everything. And he was just writing. And he wrote a sefer called Sefer Elim, which is in print. Then all the students came back. He gave them the Sefer. And with the Sefer, he brought them all back, and they all became frum again. All 500 of them. Fascinating. The Sefer Elim is a very interesting book about all types of chachmas, of medicine, all types of very interesting things. That's what it says, right? They all became... He brought all 500 back. Unbelievable.
With this Sefer.
So this is this... Now, again, his name is Yosef Shlomo the doctor, or in Latin maybe Del Medico, the doctor. And he was a great-grandson of Eliyahu, the guy who first wrote the attack on the Zohar. And like I said, the great-grandson, the Yosher, he prints his great-grandfather's Sefer, but alongside it, he writes his own defense for the Zohar. So on the one hand, he brought to the world his El Tzeda's attacks, but he wrote his own defenses.
This book that he wrote for them.
Sefer Elim, it's extant, yeah.
It's like Zohar stuff?
No, it's no, Chachma. In Yonei Chachma, science is all types of fascinating nature, personalities.
He proves Judaism, I guess, in it.
Well, it's in the brackets they tie in here, the vort is that he showed them all of his wisdom, and that blew them away, and he's still a frum Jew. So, but
that he had so much secular wisdom.
I know, right. I'm not a buck. I've read a little bit. I'm not a buck in the whole book, so I don't know if there's. It could be in some place he deals head on with the proof of God. I don't know. Anyhow, number 7.
The book still exists today, and you can read it.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Sefer Elim, you can get it. It's there. Enjoy.
Translated?
It looks like it's translated.
Oh wow, look at that. Well, you have English Google translation. They'll trade it for you. It'll be harder to read their English translation, right, than the original Hebrew. Anyhow, so let's just finish up over here. So that was the first big bang against the Zohar. Was in the 1400s by Eliyahu del Medico. Okay, it's getting late, so let's just finish up. A little bit later, there was a great man by the name of Yankov Emden. And he's the same age as the Baal Shem Tov, born mamash about the same time, in 1698, that time. But he lives for longer than the Baal Shem Tov. He passes away in the 1770s. And Rabbi Yankov Emden is famous. He questions the status of Kohanim these days. He said Yonasan Eibeshitz was a follower of Shabsai Tzvi. He said the Ramchal was a follower of Shabsai Tzvi. He said Zalman Henna, the great medactic, doesn't know what he's talking about. And he had his hands in almost every machlokes of the time he was involved. The Get of Cleves he was involved in, everything he was involved in. And he was incredible, a chacham, no question about it. And he wrote so many books. One of his Sforim is called Mitpachas Sforim. And in it, he really has a shot at the Zohar. He does concede many of the ideas come from Rashbi, but the format we have today was definitely later, much later. He thinks Moshe de Leon might have had a hand in formatting some of the stuff, adding some of the stuff, maybe some people in Moshe de Leon's time, some people after. He really shakes up the whole Zohar, that what you see there, you got to be wary of what you see in the Zohar. Now, the Chidah says, this is in the Chidah Sefer Shem Hagdolim. V'ro'isi b'havara ba'alma, I saw in passing, she'asa plilis, that Yankov Emden wrote wondrous stuff. Ad she'kasav she'eino latana, he says that the Zohar was not written by Rashbi. By the way, even those that say it's from Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, which is our tradition, we believe it was probably written by his students, and he dictated the Torahs. But either way, Yankov is not from a Tana, Ela la'achron, from someone much later. Or pikpik al agdolos v'haniroyes asher b'zoh, and all the wondrous things Yankov Emden says, you got to be wary. Says the Chidol of Fim Riyata, at first glance, Hoyisi Tomia ma'oid al dvarav. How could he say that Bechlal or Befrad? What he says generally in the details. V'rabbiseinu arayan doiraisa, the rabbis of the Torah, Moshe Cordovero, the Arizal, who had Ruach HaKodesh, Eliyahu came to them. The whole world has heard about them. They're against Yankov Emden. They say that the Zohar, we should treat it as whatever's there is sourced in Rab Shimon Bar Yochai. How could Yankov Emden come out against the greatest Kabbalists? That's what's the Chidah. The Chidah is the same time as Yankov Emden. couple years younger, but most they're living the same time. He said, it doesn't make sense. How could Yaakov Emden say, like, what's he thinking? Lochen, he says, Nirali. He says, Gam harav zal yoda be'emes u'betomim inyan ha-Zohar Kadosh. He says the Chidah, Yaakov Emden believes in the Zohar. You know why he came out against it? Because Yaakov Emden spent a big chunk of his life fighting against Shabtai Tzvi's followers. That's why he came out against Yonis and Eibeshitz and the Ramchal. Shabtai Tzvi's followers based lots of their shenanigans on the Zohar. Whenever they wanted to alter halacha, they would blame it on something they found in the Zohar. So Yaakov Emden, to stop the movement in its tracks, wanted to say, you blame it on the Zohar? What's the Zohar? Who's Zohar? What's Zohar? Who wrote the Zohar? It was to undermine the fuel that the Shabtai Tzvi had. That's what he says. Ach b'kinosa, in his zealousness on the cursed group of Shabtai Tzvi that were transgressing on serious averis, the tolu atzmam, they supported themselves with the Zohar's language. Obviously they were misconstruing the Zohar. But Yaakov Emden said, I'm not even going to get into the nitty gritty. The whole Zohar is just off the shelf. Lachin, therefore, hera upon him, therefore Yaakov Emden, lakakeh beitzasam, to really knock him out, for loimer, mishum eis lasas pikpukim elu. Yaakov Emden felt that for the benefit of the time, it's necessary to say these outlandish attacks against the Zohar. Pasha, to save Judaism. But not that he actually believed this. That's what the Chidah says. Now, there are Kabbalistic historians who question, if this is true, that was Yaakov Emden's intent, he should have hinted it somewhere. The fact that he writes so openly against the Zohar, and he let everyone believe that he was, why did he allow the whole world to assume he was against the Zohar if truthfully in his heart he didn't believe what he wrote? You would have to find somewhere in his writings a hint to this. So they questioned the Chidah.
He should have explained this.
Eliminates the
You think maybe in a letter to someone, or he would have told someone, would have said, I heard from Yaakov Emden. What?
The followers of Shabtai Tzvi followed the Ari and followed other Sifrei Kabbalah as
Right.
well. You didn't discredit them.
Correct. Good question. I believe the answer is that when they wanted to thwart halacha, they couldn't base themselves on languages of the Arizal. They had much more fuel from the Zohar. The Arizal, is so...
Based on symptom like a pshuta.
Yes, that's not a good argument. No, but certain explanations of mitzvahs they found in the Zohar, they say, you see how the Zohar explains the mitzvah? Based on that, it only applies a certain time, in a certain place, doesn't apply now, etc., etc. I guess they found, apparently they didn't find much source in the Arizal. Had they, who knows? Who knows what would have happened?
Himself was a big follower of the Arizal.
Correct, but apparently they're playing with halacha, they didn't find fuel in the Arizal's writings. Okay, let's just finish off, because... what did the Chassam Sofer say about the Zohar? The Chassam Sofer said about the Zohar the following statement. The Chassam Sofer said, if you would select from the Zohar the parts that are actually mamash from the Rashbi, not that were added later, even by the Rashbi students and their students, if you would select the raw stuff that came from the Rashbi's mouth, the whole Zohar would be a couple pages. Would be etliche dafin, etliche blätter. The Chassam Sofer, and the Chassam Sofer is mainstream. The Chassam Sofer said everything that we have was added. Now, when was it added is a big difference. If it was Rashbi's students, no, even their students. In other words, was it Tanoim that added it?
Is he saying it's a problem?
No, the Chassam Sofer was just saying about this whole debate. No, most of the Zohar was written by Reb Abba. Rav in the Gemara is Reb Abba, the Rashbi student. Anyhow, but look at number 8. I want to show you number 8.
He's not knocking it in any way.
Number 8 is from the Divrei Yisrael, who was a Rav 50 years ago in Budapest. He says, Yodua, it's known. They brought to the Chassam Sofer the Sefer Bar Yochai. There's a Sefer called Bar Yochai, which was written to booster up the Zohar, They brought it to the Chassam Sofer. You know what the Chassam Sofer said? I had more geschmack reading Yankov Emden's critique of the Zohar than the Bar Yochai's defense of the Zohar. Look what he said. He said, "Arei v'molai divrei doidim." It's more sweeter to me the words of my beloved, of the Yavitz, Yankov Emden and Mipachas Sfarim, than from Bar Yochai's responses. Bar Yochai responded to Yankov. Bar Yochai is supporting the Zohar, responding to Yankov Emden's questions. Because I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know his name. No. But he says because the Divrei Yisrael says by the Chassam Sofer, the Yankov Emden was unquestionable. Boduk Manusa as a big believer, and Yankov Emden said what he said because he really believed that much of the Zohar was added later and this and that. And he was 50 years ago a big rav in Budapest.
He didn't
in
like this
Hungary.
Bar Yochai guy. He says it.
But he's testifying. He's saying that there's a tradition in his circles that the Chassam Sofer said this statement.
What's Mistapik V'Oil?
Mistapik V'Oil is from the Lashon of on Musaf and Yom Kippur. About the Kohen drying himself and going out. Mistapik V'Oil means not so sure about it. It's the Chassam Sofer felt that the Bar Yochai guy was responding because he wanted to respond, but he himself wasn't so sure about what he was writing. Anyhow, but it's interesting.
You just said somebody saying.
No, I said two things. The Chassam Sofer said if we would only have what Rashbi said, it would be a few pages.
So
that's recorded elsewhere.
Okay.
In this Sefer, it's recorded, the Chassam Sofer said, I enjoyed more reading the critique that the Yankov Emden had than the responses that the Bar Yochai fellow wrote.
Who is this person who's writing this?
The Divrei Yisrael, he was a Rav in Budapest 50 years ago. Well, he was a big Rav.
Where is the source to that?
He says, Yodua! It's known. Everyone knows. We don't know. He knew. When he was a Bachur, all the Bachrim knew about it. It was passed on. It was passed on.
This is the same person that went for the square matzahs by the machine matzahs.
No, that was his son, the Chassam Sofer's son, the Ksav Sofer. His son. The Chassam Sofer's brother-in-law also went for the machine matzahs, Shlomo Eger. The Chassam Sofer Alein, we don't know what he... Anyhow, so there were big people who came out. There's a few more, but I'm gonna end it now. But look at number 9. Number 9 really shakes the boat for me.
Especially who it is.
The Ben Ish Chai. Number 9 is the Ben Ish Chai, Yosef Chaim of Baghdad, who were closer to our time, the Rebbe Rashab's times. Passes away 100 years ago. He was a great Kabbalist and halacha authority for the Sfardim in Baghdad, and he says, this is in his shuvas called Rav Pa'olim, he says, in Zohar HaKadosh, there are things that the Arizal said are not from the Zohar. Somebody, a Johnny come lately, stuck it in. And those that copied the Zohar, the printer, every time it was copied, people stuck in more things. And then says the Ben Ish Chai, look at what Yankov Emden said about it. Yankov Emden found things that were added later. Many things. And the Ben Ish Chai says, he quoted from the Arizal.
Well, where?
I've looked around, tried to find, I haven't found. The Ben Ish Chai says the Arizal said, which is what did Baomer say? The Zohar is Kula Kodesh, Kula Kodesh. It's all holy. But I don't know if any of the Rabbeim ever said that every word comes from Rashbi. I don't think they ever dealt with right. They never dealt with the issue head on. It was always known by Chassidim, the Zohar is Kula Kodesh. But you have here the Ben Ish Chai saying that the Arizal said, what?
That's the thing. It's not just.
Yeah, but by the Sfardim for sure, even by the Ashkenazim, right? Except there are a few big Misnagdim who like to quote the Tshuva Me'ava. The Tshuva Me'ava Rebbe Elazar Fleckels. He was the greatest student of the Noida B'Yehuda. You're talking Prague, 1700s. The Noida B'Yehuda the Noida B'Yehuda in a drasha also was a bit wary of the Zohar. But his student, the Tshuva Ma'ava, has a printed letter. It's so sharp that the copy machine wouldn't even let me copy it. It was going to destroy the whole...
About all the Zohar?
He says, he writes like this. I'm going to quote his words because he was a big Rav and his Tshuvas are very important in halacha. We've quoted him before in the Shiurim. Now, I don't know if I'll quote him again. You won't let me, but we've quoted him before. He says like this. Any word of Abaya and Rava, to me, is Be'ein Aroich worth more than one letter of the Zohar. He says, I have no problem with Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. Rav Shimon is the greatest of the great, but I don't think this book has anything to do with him. He didn't sign his name. He said, some ideas may come from Shimon Bar Yochai, but who knows which, who knows where. What?
Shimon Bar Yochai didn't sign his name.
Yeah. In other words, he believes that many ideas were added later.
But there's many midrashim they didn't sign their name.
Right, and he uses this lashon to say that he really believes the whole thing could have been made 800 years ago. Even if some things are sourced to Rashbi, who knows how many and who knows if they're even properly recorded and properly presented. And he goes so far to say that in his Bohemia, the king forbade Kabbalah to be printed. It was making a big shturim. The Christians loved Kabbalah because the 10 spheres means God has different parts, so that brought them proofs to the Trinity, all types of strange things, which we don't have time to go into.
What does that have to do with the king, though? Why would the king ban it?
It was making an upheaval. The Kabbalah was making an upheaval, and he banned it. And the Tshuva Ma'ava in his letter, he praises the Goyish authorities that don't allow Kabbalah to be printed in his area, the Zohar as well. Like, that's like a real misnagi, you know? He's praising the authorities for not allowing Kabbalah to be printed. But in his times, you had him. His teacher, the Noah Yehuda, wasn't as sharp, but also was a little wary. Yankev Emden coming out full force. The Chassam Sofer says what he says. So 200 years ago, if you had a guy who said, I'm wary of the Zohar, I could understand him. Because you have big people that were wary. But over the last couple generations till today, Zohar has become much more accepted.
Shadal also.
You have several from that same
Right, but
time frame, or earlier or a little later, or just as big or bigger.
The Arizal, right. But if you're right, but Misnagid, who's
No, but
their rabbi, is the Noah Yehuda.
You had the Gra, you have all. They were all.
True, correct. But even those, those that were outspoken 200 years ago, their argument has kind of died down. Meaning, how many people now?
You have Yosef Kapach's grandfather, the Dardea.
That's true.
He also wrote a
But
book.
even
He wrote a
amongst
paper.
Fardim now, the Zohar is. By the way, I'm talking about now amongst Fruma people, amongst Freie people, amongst the modern non-religious Kabbalah scientists or Kabbalah professors, academics. Not of Kabbalah, but the proof of Kabbalah. So, right. No. But they still love to quote Yankev Emden, and they'll quote all of these things. You say even amongst Orthodox there were those that had issues, but today amongst Orthodox Yidden, it's completely accepted. Right, true, there was a Rabbi Kapach Zayda who had issue with Kabbalah completely. But by now, which Sfardim now follow? Sfardim.
Well, they're not Sfardim, they're Teimanim.
Right, but today, right. So they've got
all the Sfardim
even
were
right.
Sfardim.
Those Teimanim have integrated amongst the Sfardim. Exactly.
But even the Ben Ish Chai that you quoted, he could have been fed bad information because there's nowhere that
The
his-
Ben
what
Ish
he
Chai,
said is
the
not-
Ben Ish Chai is his halachas are almost
Yeah, but you said there's no. He said that the Arizal said something that's not.
because I don't know that's almost non-relevant.
He didn't say don't
No,
find
okay.
it.
Is it sourced somewhere?
just said-
As the Ben Ish Chai would say, he doesn't think very highly of me either. I don't know where he heard it
You
from.
didn't find it yet.
But is there any
I'll
other
find
place
the
where you
source.
can?
The Ben Ish Chai learned Kabbalah from people who might even have a chain going back to the Arizal. There was things that were passed on.
From the Rashash.
Right, exactly. So I don't question that if he said that the Arizal said it. The question is that how much did the Arizal say? Was it a drop here, a drop there? Because I'll tell you, even if it's not,
Yaakov Emden doesn't say everything.
exactly. Even
says some of
if
it
you
is a
find
problem.
something not from the Rashbi, it came later. Who's later?
Right, it could be
Even if
students.
Moshe de Leon added some of his own commentary, Moshe de Leon was a master Kabbalist. He was one of the greatest Mukabalim 800 years ago. He wrote many Svarim, and all of his Svarim are wonderful Svarim.
Doesn't discredit the worth of the Zohar.
No, but it's a different. No,
That's what Yaakov
but no. But if it's from Moshe de Leon, he was a great Kabbalist. But he's one individual.
It's not the Rashbi.
If it's from Rashbi and Rashbi's yeshiva, it's untouchable.
He takes the authority,
It's untouchable,
right?
right? So that's the
But also,
Right.
Reality, though, is
his
today
wife.
it's untouchable either way. It's not.
amongst from circles. Yeah, but even amongst the different prints of Zohar, if you go historically, the different prints,
There's different
there's even amongst the different prints, you'll find lots of variations. You have lots of variations. Right. So,
And also,
Okay.
what about Moshe de Leon's wife? And the other,
Sheesh.